good afternoon, everyone. We're back in business here. Our next speaker is Ron Code, and he's going to give us a very interesting personal confession on selling Muntz TVs. We will see what the story. We will see.
I heard that the limits of what do you call it, where you can't be convicted anymore.
Statute of limitations. Yeah. I think you have some protection on that account.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll turn it over to you, Ron. Go ahead.
Thank you. What does it take to make a successful TV product company? Well, you'd have to have some engineers, wouldn't you? Production people, marketing, design, and finally some kind of sales approach too. Yes, sales. The final frontier, where the rubber meets the road, and where success or failure is ultimately determined. Now, my talk is about Muntz Television, Earl Muntz himself, and some of my sales experiences. Now, Muntz was a pretty well-known brand, and they made about 1 million TVs. Was it a success? Well, was Hewlett-Packard a success? Was anybody? Ultimately, there were no survivors, only degrees of longevity. Now, Muntz didn't do it first, and he certainly didn't do it best. But he did do it most flamboyantly and notoriously. Now, if I can see if my thing goes to the next slide. Okay. This is an ad from about 1949 or 1950, and it talks about why you should be buying a Muntz. And some of it's pretty straightforward. They claim because it has fewer tubes, there's less to wear out, you know, and uses less electricity because it's, you know, fewer watts in the set. These are things you could say are features to Muntz. He also mentions something about being easier on your eyes, and you were supposed to check with your oculist. When was the last time you've heard the word oculist? Anyway, I did ask my optometrist. He said, yes, it's a valid word, but nobody uses it anymore. So this is sort of a typical ad they were running, and it's not really possible to appreciate Muntz TVs apart from its founder, Earl Muntz, or, as he coined himself, Madman Muntz. In 1934, Muntz was a 20-year-old high school dropout who started selling used cars in Elgin, Illinois. I think it's the same place they made the watch, Elgin's. In 1940, he moved his car sales to Glendale, California, and he advertised heavily on radio, up to 120 spots a day. And on billboards, there were about 150 of them in Los Angeles area alone. And he had catchy lines like, I buy them retail and sell them wholesale. It's more fun that way. Other gimmicks included the daily car special that he had promised to wreck with a sledgehammer if it didn't sell that day. Now, obviously, he probably had to do it once, and that was filmed and used, but that's what worked. And he was so well known that tour buses of the area would go by his car lots to show the out-of-towners what it was. And he also saw that used cars in California were selling for more than in the Midwest. Remember, this is right coming out of the Depression. And this was a difference he could profit from. So he paid soldiers and sailors $50 to drive a car out west on their way to reporting for duty in California. Cheap transportation for his cars to stock his lot with. At the end of the war, he got the dealership for Kaiser cars in LA. You could say that he was very successful in the car business. In 1948, he bought the Curtis Craft sports car company. Come on, did it change? Well, this is jumping just a little bit ahead. I'll see if it comes back to it.
I think it's the next slide.
All right, very good. This is a picture of one of the very first Muntz televisions. Then I'll come back to that in a second. And then he had this car company, and they made a car called the Muntz Jet. They sold less than 200 of them, and they lost money on them. They cost the price of about a Cadillac. and they were sold mainly to Hollywood people. Okay, at about the same time, 1948, he started the Muntz TV business. The investors included Bob Hope, Dick Powell, Burt Lahr, in other words, the Hollywood crowd. His first set, the M21, was pretty conventional. There it is. His advertising was not. He mailed out the channel selector knob to potential buyers with a note saying, "Call us and we'll show up with the rest of the set." Okay, he developed, I think I can now find the Muntz jet. There it is. Have you ever seen one in real life? Yeah, they exist. I saw one in Santa Barbara on display, but I've never seen one since. And I know they sell for over $100,000 now because they're quite rare, and they have a story. Anyway, he developed a caricature of himself. There it is, as Madman Muntz, a Napoleonic figure in long johns and silly boots. He actually hired a cartoonist from Warner Brothers to do this. Ads for his TV sets had memorable lines such as, "Stop staring at your radio." Muntz used skywriting. Some credit Muntz for the abbreviation TV because television was too long to write in the sky. Now, this is a dubious claim since television stations had been using the letters T and V with their call signs for some time. By the way, this is Pepsi. Pepsi did 2,225 sky ads like this in 1940. It was something. And I was wondering, they have sometimes at the beach, they have planes that'll pull a banner, and they have some that will do like a dot matrix thing, and they have a jets. But this is quite different. Have you ever actually seen skywriting? You're fascinated. What the hell is he doing? Is he out of control, So it really gets attention. Muntz mingled with the Hollywood crowd, and he had celebrity friends and acquaintances. He was married 7 times. And he referred to his ex's new husbands as his husbands-in-law. Somehow he remained friends with all his ex-wives, which may be the most remarkable thing of all about him. Oh yeah, he named his daughter TV, T-E-E-V-E-E. Later on, she went by Tina, but, okay. Wikipedia says that Muntz made the first TV set to sell for less than $100. However, the truth around Muntz is always murky. Now, here's something from 1947, and I saw a little color picture of it back here. This is mentioning that you can get this set. I circled it for $100 back then. But we don't know whether it actually sold for that price or not. But certainly, Muntz, we all know about the Pilot TV that sold for $99, and that actually sold for $99. So Muntz certainly didn't do the first. But, if you just read Wikipedia, you sometimes get misleading information, shall we say. Maybe nobody cares enough to correct it. Okay. Now, this TV up here is a teleview. Here's an ad that mentions a Muntz set for $99. It's down at the very bottom. You see you can get a 20-inch TV for $99. Over on the right-hand corner, however, it says there's a $10 delivery charge, which is kind of funny since all his stores were supposed to be factory outlets. Well, we'll come back to that truth in advertising a little later. Next one is from, this is from one of the boroughs of New York City. Maybe it was Queens, I'm not sure. This ad in the article says that he had 100 trucks and 200 men with it. Now, do you believe that? I don't. Here's 5 of them, but 100? No. Now, Muntz evidently had a magnetic personality. He was the kind of person everyone just wanted to be around. I think the old story about muntzing a TV with a pair of clippers was probably made up by Muntz himself. Muntz understood the common touch and knew that screen size was the primary way people measured the value of a TV set. The screen size was the first order term in their buying equation. Muntz would have agreed with the maxim, a difference to be worth a difference has to make a difference. In urban areas, his minimalist sets produced an acceptable picture on a big screen at a budget price. Somebody who was looking for excellence in engineering or craftsmanship just wasn't in his sights. Muntz TVs were sold from factory stores. Actually, they were just franchise stores. The FTC tried to get him to drop the pretense that they were any closer to the factory than any other store's brands. But psychology often trumps logic, and it appealed to the Muntz customers that he was eliminating the middleman, which, remember, there was a lot of concern about that. Muntz was always on the move. In 1959, he left Muntz TV in bankruptcy, and it continued without him for about another decade. He then started a company producing the first 4-track cartridge car stereos. In LA, cars were lined up to get these units installed below the dash. As usual, advertising was the key, using models in his ads, like this one. There she is. What does it say? Yeah, turn on, lover, you know. So, okay. He didn't consider this to stooping anything. This is a high-quality ad for Muntz. So that went on for a while, and the profit, however, wasn't in these units being installed under the dash. It was in selling the recorded tapes, and he made deals with the producers, the artists on some of these tapes, and he had connections there. Later, he had another electronics venture, the Muntz Home Theater, which, there it is, which was really nothing more than a Sony Triniton set with some projection of lenses or mirrors. Later, he sold a satellite dish system in 1981 for $9,000.
The home theater, don't forget the painted plywood screen. The screen on that is silver painted plywood.
He would see the value of that because, you know, you're not going to spend any money on something that doesn't make any difference, see?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. He died in 1987. Now we get to the confessional part of my talk. I first became acquainted with Muntz, the brand, in summer of 1962 in Seattle. The store owner, Alvin Schoenfeld, showed me a storage room with at least 50 trade-in sets stacked up or sitting around. See how many of these you can get running today, he said to me. I passed that test and later did house calls for warranty work. It was a good summer for me. The Seattle World's Fair was on, and I was 20. I liked working with another repairman named George Musselman because he made repair work sound like fun. He had colorful names for our tools. His cheater cord was his shitter cord. I thought he was clever. The next summer, they didn't need a repairman, but I was asked if I could sell. I said, sure, because I knew a lot about television. What I didn't know much about was selling. Selling is more about knowing the customer than it is about knowing the product. A great salesman knows how to use the right mix of authority, empathy, charm, style, etc. These tools are used by statesmen, coaches, teachers, advisors, and ministers, to name a few. Like musical talent, it involves practice and probably inherent ability. Now for my admissions. Our store advertised heavily. There it is. That's very typical of the store they were running when I was there. Full pages in the main newspapers. $199 for all this. You can imagine why we sold a ton of these sets at this price. But we didn't. We didn't sell a single one. Yes, we had the set, and it was right up near the front of the store. You might think I pushed the customer away from this lost leader and toward a more expensive set. Absolutely not. I let the customer push me away. Otherwise, they would have suspected a bait and switch scheme, which it was. Let me tell you about this set. It was identical to our $279 base model, except we had taken it to the local paint shop where the fake wood finish was sprayed with an unappealing brown color. The cheap stereo record player was crippled further into monaural by removing one of the small speakers. And notice it doesn't say stereo, you know, it doesn't say anything about the finish. So here's how it goes.
With trade, it says.
Here, customers coming in. Hi, folks, can I help you? We're here to see about that $199 television set. Yes, sir. You folks come right over here. Here it is. This is a little beauty here. You get everything. Your basic needs are met here. You got the TV, and you got a radio in there. You got a record player, and you know, for this kind of price, you just can't get anything that would be better. And this is a big seller down in the projects, you know, and people on very fixed incomes. Well, what about that? What about that set over there? Well, that's in the better quality line. You can see it has the look and feel of genuine mahogany or walnut. Of course, you know, look and feel means it isn't, right? So eventually, they're off of that cheap set. That's for not the kind of person they are, and. I actually heard that I would have to pay the store $10 if I sold that set. I never did, so I didn't have to pay that, and I didn't know anybody who did. But so, if a customer didn't have the money or credit for a new Muntz, we had a darkened room where we had some working trade-ins that sold from $30 to $90. We got them from a department store, probably Frederick and Nelson, one of the big ones. The warranty was simple. Your money back on any better set within 90 days. So when their $40 set crapped out, or they got tired of pulling the curtains and turning off all the lights to see a dim picture, guess where they came to buy a much better set? This is an old sales truth. Customer will avoid reevaluating the situation because he has already invested. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. Okay. During the Seattle World's Fair, many minimalist apartments were converted into motels. We had about 200 portable Muntz TVs rented out to these temporary motels. The motels charged their guests about double what we were charging them, so everybody was happy. At the end of the 6-month fair, basically our cost of the sets was covered, and we sold them all again as demo sets with a full factory warranty. Again, yeah. So everybody profited. Muntz would have been proud of us. The next year, my Muntz store switched brands. First we had Olympic, then Curtis Mathis. Then I switched stores to a store called Television City. It wasn't big. You pick a big name if you want to sound big, Television City, where we had Zenith and several brands. We also had a gimmick. We advertised on radio that you could rent a TV for $4 a month. Call now. The calls resulted in leads for the salesman, and I being one of them. Here's where the ethics becomes more than a little shady. You do understand that we never actually rented any TVs. We sold them. To pull off this little switcheroo, you must gain the customer's trust. This begins as soon as you walk in their door. The first thing I do is spot some piece of crap on the mantel or coffee table and admire it thoroughly and thoughtfully. This is almost as good as petting someone's dog if you want them to like you. Okay. Eventually, I would get into the by the way, I would say that I don't normally handle these rentals, but I was coming back, and the store asked me to stop by and see you, because normally I just sell TVs. Eventually, I would get into the details of the rental. This is where I reveal, almost offhandedly, but to their shock, that any repair costs on the disappointing small 9-inch TV would be their responsibility. And that includes, not likely, but possibly, replacement CRT. At this point, the customer should be quite concerned about what he's getting into. This is when I ask for a drink of water and exclaim how thirsty I've been and how thankful I am to have this drink. By now, the customer thinks that they've done me a favor, and this is crucial. I'm in their debt. They'll start believing me then. Eventually, I say, you know, I have to tell you, as if I'm their new best friend, if I were you, I would just buy a new 19-inch TV for a little more money, and you'd have a full warranty. Bingo. About this time, color was becoming a necessity. More network programs were in color, not just flipper and football. Color sets sold from about $500 to $800. We lined them up against the wall, side by side, all with the same program. It was easy to adjust the tint, color, and contrast and brightness to make the more expensive sets look like they had a better picture. The customer could easily see for himself that you get what you pay for. So, two young nurses wanted to buy a TV, and I was ready to close the deal when one started talking about color TV. Not wanting to jeopardize the sale that I thought I had in hand, I started bad-mouthing color. Hardly any programs are in color. You need a spare bedroom for the repairman to stay in. The technology is still evolving, etc. Finally, a light bulb in my head came on. They really wanted a color TV. So then I talked about the virtues of color, and they bought a color TV for me. They had completely forgotten about the negatives that I had talked about less than 10 minutes earlier, because they had never really listened. I learned firsthand that people only hear what they want to hear, and you can take that to the bank. Since most of our customers didn't have enough savings to buy dinner, let alone a TV, financing was the norm. There weren't any bank credit cards back then. When we advertised no money down, but we needed to show the finance company that they indeed had put 20% down to get the financing. Well, that's simple. You add 20% to the original sales price and then subtract it off as their down payment. Everybody was happy with that. Probably even the finance company, as long as they didn't have to know. Not so different from the liar loans that brought down Lehman Brothers not long ago. You know, everyone's happy and don't tell me about it. When I see the kind of scams that are run on the internet and the obvious corruption and lies of our current highest official, I think my salesman past looks rather angelic. After all, my customers actually got a TV to watch, and at a reasonable price. Could they have done better? Perhaps. Perhaps not. I learned a lot about life that year, that many good people live on the edge of insolvency. I learned about the clever and ruthless sales techniques, no, not ruthless, but tricky sales techniques used by Kirby vacuum cleaners, waterless cookware, wall-to-wall carpeting, car repair scams, you name it. I also saw how some customers were real crooks, out to cheat the merchants. Sometimes it was seller beware. I have other stories. I could tell you about selling a TV to a blind person. Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. And what it's like, and what the homes were like in the houses where I repossessed their TVs for, you know, you could sort of classify people if you wanted to after some of these experiences. But there's two things I hope you picked up from my little talk. One, advertisements and announcements are not reliable evidence. I don't think that Muntz ever sold a TV for under $100. Even when did Muntz first sell his TV seems to be up for some, they say, started the TV business in '47. I can't find anything before '49. Even the model, the one I showed you, is called an M21, and it's listed in, I think, on the, what's the Ohio, you know, the big TV.
Screen went dark. Yep. Screen timed out.
Oh, well, there wasn't much more I had to say, so on the screen, anyway. There was these what are they called? Rider, Volume 3, number 1 under Muntz, lists an M12 TV, just like the M21, 22, which only differed by screen size. The M12 was identical, except it didn't have a damper tube, just had a 3K resistor for dampening. Wow. Okay, I cannot find any evidence that an M12 was ever sold, or even a price for one. and yet it's listed, and here it is. So what's the truth? I don't know. So every TV collector should have a Muntz, okay? Just because of its interesting history, you know? Especially if you can find that model M12. Do you have any questions about what I...
Didn't Ryder just publish what the manufacturer sent them?
Yeah, see, there's no proof that it was ever actually made or even...
For something that never existed.
We don't know. I don't know. You know, some of these things it's hard to tell.
Yeah, and how about the damper tube? I mean,
Well, you can do without it. You have to lose a good hunk of the...
cut it out.
You know.
Just do in there.
Yeah, that was used in a lot of pre-war stuff, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I may actually own a Muntz TV, but I can't confirm it. There's no identifying marks. It looks just like the first ones you showed us. So
Okay,
do you know
well,
how to identify
I don't think there's that many of those around. The early ones, the M20.
the unusual thing about
There will only be 12.
3 knobs in the front? Yeah. Muntz also did some, what do you call, private label manufacturing. In 1963, they sold 85,000 sets. It wasn't a mom and pop shop. He had an allocation of 10,000 color tubes from RCA that year, or for the next year.
the unusual feature about it is it does have the 3 knobs, but they have the lucite outer rims, which I know came from LA area.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody's seen that before, but
Well-
it has that.
In one of the ads that I put up there, you know, it's so easy, there's only 3 knobs.
Okay.
You know,
I'll assume
all the
it's-
rest are in the back where it was easier to put them anyway.
I'll assume it's a Muntz.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got a couple of comments about Muntz.
Yeah.
They truly, if you've ever looked at the schematic for one or seen one in person,
Yeah.
it's amazing that they worked at all. As an example, the horizontal output section consists of 1 tube. The oscillator is the horizontal output tube. There may or may not
Look
be
at
a damper.
Motorola's 7-inch sets. That's what they did.
Yeah, but they were deflected. They were electrostatic. I'm talking about a magnetically deflected set.
Well, the deflection circuitry, and particularly the sync circuitry, is bare bones. It just looked for a pulse, and hopefully it came at the right time. You know,
Yeah.
I can imagine it was terrible with ignition interference and stuff.
Mine works.
I understand that Muntz made them for several department store chains, one of which made them in kind of an upholstered or furry cabinet. I've never seen one.
There's the one to get, obviously.
That's
you know,
the one to
a
get.
fur-covered Muntz.
The last comment I'll make is, years ago, when I was collecting my Sam's Photo Facts, I bought a set mostly to get the binders.
Yeah.
And all of the Muntz pages were worn out and used up. So some poor soul had
Well,
been the
that was
service
a Muntz
station.
shop, obviously, that had that setup.
Some poor soul
you
had
just,
been
you just saw fewer tubes,
fixing
fewer
Muntz,
repairs.
yeah, trying to fix Muntz TVs.
Actually, one customer one day said, "How many tubes does that set have?" And I basically went into my usual coughing attack, you know. And then he said, "I lately like my old Muntz because it had fewer tubes." I said, "Well, then bingo, this is the one for you," you know. So what some people would see as a weakness, others saw as a virtue.
Admiral also used that as a reason to buy an Admiral in the late 60s, I think, that their line was parts that aren't there can't go bad.
That's a pretty good line, isn't it?
Actually,
Wrong.
Actually, I've got a comment about taking the parts out of the sets. A fellow engineer I used to work with said his father was an engineer at RCA for his entire career, and his job was cost cutting, literally. He would take a brand new TV set out of the engineering prototype shop, and you take the schematic, you look back and forth, look back, and start cutting parts out. And he would keep cutting parts out of that set until it failed. Then he would put the last one back in, and that's the version that would go to production. He said that was his job, his entire career.
Well, and that was RCA. I think RCA was a little more careful, but I don't know. It's a good story in any way. And like I say, Muntz probably made it up himself, you know. He had repaired radios as a child. He had some knowledge. He wasn't a fool.
And there was a rumor about Muntz sets, they were inner city sets, and to be, because of that, they could use fewer tubes because they're closer to the station.
Well, yes and no. The set I showed you here, the M21, had 3 stages of IF, and nobody had more than that. It had a standard coil tuner, which is, the standard. So I've seen comments by people say we were 80 miles from the station, and my Muntz set worked just fine.
Did you have one last question?
Just a couple comments. That you said that Muntz TV went into bankruptcy.
Yes, it did.
Whoever took over Muntz TV actually ended up suing Muntz because he opened the tape stores, and to settle the lawsuit, they had to put a disclaimer on all their ads, not affiliated with Muntz TV.
That wouldn't have discouraged anybody, though, either way. I've got FTC ruling from 1966 where they went after a Muntz store who were selling basically my $199 set, and only they even had a lower price than that. And they said the salesman was not available for delivery and so on. We didn't violate any of those things. We had the set there. We didn't say they couldn't buy it, There were a few cases where a customer couldn't be discouraged in our little rental scheme, shall we say, and we had to tell him that his credit had been turned down. And it was a rental, and that's just I have no control over it. Have you ever bought a car and they have to go check with a manager or something all the time? They go back and have a cup of coffee and come back, and they know exactly what they're doing.
Okay, Ron, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed hearing all that. You can tell from the number of questions. As you promised, a different kind of presentation, and it was fun.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Nat. By the way, Ron has to go pretty soon, so if you have any lingering questions, you can catch him on the way out the door. But he also brought a partially restored television set, a 7-incher, and a stack of writer volumes 1 through 4. He's going to leave those here. Somebody can take them. Talk to me if you're interested in any of those items, and we'll divvy them up in some way when we finish today.
Yeah, I'll put my hat out for contribution.
Okay, Nat is next with the story of UHF.
Okay. Good. I can actually see the slides on the screen here, too. Okay, so this is probably, I hope this is whet your appetite. I highlighted the California stations, the UHF stations, and title of the presentation, it's UHF, which stands for Ultra High Frustration Under Heavy Fire. This, if you talk about a scam, was unintentional, but it became almost like a government scam. It wasn't intended by anybody to be this way, but UHF was really sort of a second-class frequency, and we'll see how they dealt with it. So first, got to talk about when was UHF first used, the ultra-high frequency band. When was it first used? And this kind of connects in with last year's presentation on the development of color television. And so CBS had a pre-war mechanical scan color hybrid system that used 343 lines. After the war, they used 405, I believe, 405 after the war in 1951. But we're not really going to focus on that today. They transmitted off the Chrysler building, and the color antennae for UHF are in the lower portion of the Chrysler building, okay? And the 411 line sits, 441, that's a typo. The 441 line system and later the 525 line system, which became NTSC, are the little dipoles, and they're on 4 sides, and there's like 2 layers of them. So they have this very strange looking one for UHF. Okay, and it was never viewed by the public. It was only viewed by press coverage, like a quick press conference or demonstrations to the FCC. So it really wasn't ready for prime time. But this is the transmitter they used. I was able to find some pictures of that. And it would have sent out a signal on what today is 17 or 18, channel 17 or 18. It wasn't very strong, the signal, but then they weren't trying to serve an audience. They're just looking at it themselves and seeing how it works. They were experimenting with it. This is the pamphlet for that transmitter. And here are what some of the sets look like back at the time. So these are actually pre-war 1940 scanning disc television sets that had a regular CRT and had a color wheel in front of them. All right. Here's a post-war model. They sort of resumed their tests for a short while. And then the last use, this was on VHF though. The failed color launch, you could call it. The scanning disc television system was only seen on 5 TV stations. They would transmit for an hour a day. And then on the weekends, they tried doing football games and things, but nobody could see the picture unless they had converted their set. It wasn't the same standard, so it looked like spaghetti on a screen. Like, if you remember the pay-per-view or encrypted cable systems where you had to get a special box, that's sort of what I imagined it would look like. But anyways, it was only witnessed by people in those 5 cities, and very short, and they gave it up and blamed it on the Korean War for not continuing. That the actuality was it was not compatible, and that destroyed the market because the market was already saturated enough with TVs, even though it was still during the freeze. There were still plenty of televisions out there in all the cities that did have TV service. This is what just show you Arthur Godfrey being televised on CBS in color in the control room, and then Ed Reitan's television set that's located now in the ETF, Early Television Foundation in Hilliard, Ohio, or Columbus, Ohio. So a very short season. You can see the dates. And there were only about 400 of these sets sold, and I believe all of them but 2 were recalled. And I think Danny Gustafson in Chicago had one, and Ed Reitan had the other, and it's now available for public viewing. They aren't going to operate it though, but it's in Hilliard, Ohio. All right, so then we have the launch of UHF. What was the purpose of UHF? Okay, why did they come up with UHF? Well, I'll jump ahead a little bit. It may be on another slide later, but the purpose for developing UHF is that after they lifted the freeze, during the freeze they had realized there weren't enough frequencies, especially for big cities that had lots of television viewers and could have watched maybe 7 stations like New York City. But Philadelphia, for example, which I grew up for the first 10 years of my life, and I have a personal story all about UHF arriving in Philadelphia, had an enormous population. Okay, it was like the 4th television market size-wise after Chicago, and yet they only got 4 channels, and one of them was educational. Boring. Okay, so you got NBC, ABC, and CBS like anybody would in western Wisconsin. I mean, you know, you got the same number of stations as I did growing up. So, and yet we had this big city there. It was UHF that opened it up, but that's the 3rd phase of UHF. So the first phase was the color phase of CBS. The second phase is now we're introducing black and white broadcasting on UHF for regular commercial consumption, and it was field tested by RCA out of the station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, okay, that had this experimental call sign there. And this is very difficult to get pictures of this. I mean, it was not publicized very much except in trade magazines. Nobody knew it was there. If you lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut at the time, you wouldn't even know it was going on because none of the TVs could receive UHF. And the UHF converters at the time looked like this. And again, they're sort of a factory/laboratory model for field testing. And yes, ETF has that box, that strange-looking UHF tuner, to the left on the top shelf. So those two on the left are from the field test phase. They weren't sold to the public. The rest of his display, those were UHF converter boxes sold to the public. And approximately, I would say about half, depending on the area, half of the viewers of UHF would have used a converter box on a VHF-only television. The other half bought TV sets that actually had the tuner on the side. I've seen Philcos with a UHF tuner on the side here. So, during the freeze, they discovered that TV stations were jamming each other, especially basically in the Northeast. That's where the problem existed. So, for example, if you know on the map where Lancaster, Pennsylvania is, it's 100 miles west of Philadelphia, and straight south of it, about 80 miles to the south of Lancaster, as the crow flies, is Washington, D.C., and they were both broadcasting on Channel 4. And then New York City had a Channel 4. So the Lancaster station, if you lived between the two, you would just get interference. So that was why they put a freeze on it. And they didn't move the Lancaster station off of Channel 4 and they put it on Channel 8. They didn't move that station until 1952, after the freeze was lifted. And Cleveland shifted all their frequencies. Okay, Cleveland had a bunch of, I guess you're familiar with Cleveland. So they had like Channel 4 and 8, 9, 4 and 9, and I think 5 got to stay where it was. And so 4 moved down to 3, and 9 moved down to 8, and they assigned some other frequencies. They had to reassign some frequencies in the Northeast and some of the Midwest to get everything not interfering with each other. But certain areas were, there was no way to give them enough VHF stations, so they came out with UHF as well. So the first UHF station to go on the air was, of all places, Portland, Oregon. Now, it came on as the lone station in Portland in 1952, and was the only station for about a year, almost a year. And then other stations came on the air on VHF. And so the station basically in 1957 chickened out and left the UHF band and moved down to Channel 12. So that slide that you saw at the beginning before the talk started of all those UHF stations going on, those are the UHF stations from 52 and 53 that are still on the same frequency up till 2009. Okay, we're not talking about digital here, but during the entire analog broadcasting history, those stations came on in 52 or 53 that you saw flashing by there. So there's like the one in Fresno and 24, the one in Bakersfield. I think it's a 40, no, it's not 47. Forgot it, K-back it is today. But anyways, the one in Bakersfield, the one in Fresno, they were on that frequency at the time that they started and never moved. So, 27, I have a TV guide from right before it switched to Channel 12. It's in 1956, and only Channel 27 has color programming because it's the NBC affiliate, and nobody else that week in the TV guide listed as color. So 27 in Portland had a color programming. As the stations were being introduced, okay, the freeze was over, the new station, and they were touted for this great advantage that they didn't suffer from ghosts, so you could use them in urban areas, and they didn't suffer from interference. And now we have to talk about Mrs. Morrison's sewing machine. Okay, I was an 11-year-old kid. We had UHF on the TV. The town had UHF. It was in western Pennsylvania after we'd moved away from Philadelphia. And anytime we'd be watching on, especially on a low band a VHF station like Channel 2 or 4, we'd be watching something and the sparks would fly on the screen and you'd hear that. It was like someone was deliberately jamming the broadcast on Channel 2 or 4. And it also appeared on Channel 11, which was another Pittsburgh station that we got. And I discovered fairly quickly, well, we'll just switch it to the UHF and tune in Youngstown, which is only 20 miles away, and watch the same network program that you're watching on CBS out of Pittsburgh and just get it on 27 in Youngstown. And that's how I discovered that, yeah, there's less interference because of the higher frequency. So that as this electrical sewing machine across the street would be going, we could watch the program still on UHF. The other sad disadvantage was the one about trees, okay? That was written up about KPTV in Portland, Channel 27. They had issues with people that they were behind the trees. They couldn't get the signal. It wasn't penetrating the forests. Well, I don't have it written down here, but I can sort of do it from memory. One of the representative for Channel 19, which at the time was on Channel 67 in Columbia, South Carolina, was in New York City. And he was CBS affiliate. And he walked in, and the secretary said, I've been looking at the reports, and the boss was talking about the reports. How come Ed Sullivan, which is the #1 show on CBS, only has an Arbitron rating of 4,000 viewers, and NBC's running their show, and they've got 50,000 viewers. What's going on? It's the trees, ma'am. And she went, what? And she explained the interference issue of Channel 67, which the higher the frequency, the weaker the signal. It was being blocked by the trees, so hardly anybody could get the CBS affiliate outside of the city of Columbia, South Carolina. But the NBC station was on VHF 10, so that's why it had the much higher rating. It wasn't the quality of the program, it was the viewability of the signal. Okay, so here's the Portland advertising out of that TV guide, just to let you know that it really was there. It's not there anymore. And it was the NBC affiliate as of 52 when it went on the air. And here is the issue that this is why it was a lot of problem to be a UHF broadcaster from 52 until 1964 and maybe a little thereafter, is that it was not required that a TV set be able to receive UHF. It was an option, and you had to pay more. Okay, and I'd be interesting to know if there was a Muntz television that ever had UHF, because it would have cost them another $30 to put it in. So you had to pay that extra money to have it built into the set, or go out and buy that converter. And you can see that the price of the converter was sometimes as much as $50, $60 for a better one perhaps. And you also had to buy the antenna. Oops. So you go and buy this converter, and then you realize it doesn't get anything, or it gets a very poor signal because you need an outdoor antenna, especially if you have trees in the area. And so it was an extra cost to people to have UHF. So any city basically that had 2 VHF stations, any market that had 2 VHF stations, basically the UHF channel never survives during that period of time up until the later 60s. It just couldn't get through because not enough people could view it, because everybody was satisfied getting their month set for $100 and watching the 2 VHF channels that they could get. However, if the market only had 1 VHF station, often the UHF station survived. And then there was something, and we'll talk about UHF islands in a bit. So costs extra. They advertised the sets out there. You can see from 53 onwards, some of them. And this ad probably appears in a national magazine. It looks like it's a national magazine publication, but it would have been marketed to the areas that had UHF. Okay, same with guaranteed UHF tuning. Well, yeah, pay a little more and we'll guarantee it for you, all right? It's like buying that warranty, all right? And this even applied to the color sets. The color TVs didn't automatically come with UHF, but these ones did in this marketing here.
And they didn't ever come without it. C54 only
Came with UHF.
every set.
The early ones, the very early ones. But then you get to the 57 models,
Next year
58,
it's optional, yeah.
and it's optional. But did they use fixed UHF, which is like a tuner slug?
Not on that one, that's continuous.
That's continuous.
The earlier sets used the strips.
Yeah.
The set before this one used the strips.
Like your CT100 has 4 strips in it, and one of them was 34, I think, or something. We were trying to figure out where was it used.
And the 21 CT55 also had the strips.
Had the strips. Okay, so these had continuous tuning. Okay, and then we get the conversion ads. Pittsburgh was really an interesting intermixed city. That was the term they used for cities that had VHF and UHF out of the same city. It was an intermixed market. And so they got a Dumont television station called WDTV, originally on Channel 3. After the freeze, they moved it to Channel 2, and then Dumont made the biggest mistake in his life and sold it to Westinghouse, and then that was his source of income was gone, because it virtually had a monopoly on this market in Pittsburgh. It was the one VHF channel on Channel 2, and everybody else had to watch UHF if they lived near enough to transmitters, because it's hilly. And hills and trees are the enemy of UHF. And VHF doesn't like hills that much either. So the 2 stations were 16 and 53 in Pittsburgh at the time. They went out of existence and then came back with other ownership later in the late 60s. They brought the stations back to life, but they have no, what do you call it, ancestral connection with the original owners. So the stations at the time could not compete. The Channel 53 station lasted 11 months. Boom, died. Channel 16 put up a good fight for about 4 to 5 years, and then finally went dark and quickly was replaced by a VHF station of ABC Network. Okay. So here you can see the price of a UHF TV. If you ever happen to have collected a television from the 50s, sometimes the model will say U at the end of this model number. It'll say U if it had UHF. I remember owning a GE metal 19-inch in the can type TV from about 57, and it had UHF tuner on it by chance. And it was built in, and its model number was, like something 19, GMV 19-U, because it had the UHF tuner in it. So the Arvin. Now, the UHF islands. The UHF islands were the ones that UHF channels did best in because they only had UHF. There was no VHF assigned to that market, and you probably would have had to have a very, very, very tall tower to pick up a city 100 miles away or more to get the VHF channels nearby. So Bakersfield and Fresno became UHF islands. They didn't start as UHF islands, which we'll get into in a minute. But that's a list of some of the all UHF cities. Okay, so Youngstown still has those 3 stations and more now, and they started out as UHF and they stayed UHF, and they, then went digital in 2009. 7, 9, whatever. Getting my dates mixed up here, but Youngstown, for example, or Scranton, Pennsylvania, both got assigned channel 73. Now, the higher the frequency, the shorter the range, the more difficult it is to receive. And it's like the FCC unintentionally gave them the shaft. Okay? And UHF, basically, if you had a VHF station nearby, you're getting the shaft with these UHF stations because most of the people in your viewing area wouldn't even have it on the TV set. Youngstown, yes, it was all UHF, but only within 20 miles of the city. As you got north of Youngstown, you got into the Cleveland range of stations. As you went south or east, you got into the range of Pittsburgh or Johnstown, which all had VHF stations. So the higher frequencies, this is just a list of a few of them, including the one in Columbia, South Carolina that I remember watching on Channel 19. So the left side is the original call sign and frequency, and then sometimes the top two kept the call sign. They just moved the number down to get better range. And there was something that's not on the slides here, but there was a very technological formula for all you engineers out there that you would have harmonic disturbance if you had certain numbers in the same city. So basically, the UHF channel numbers had to be assigned very, very carefully. So you had to have them like 6 apart, 6 numbers or 6 channels apart or more. And perhaps that's why they stuck Youngstown and Scranton with 73 at first. I don't know, but get it out of there. But it was moved down later. So it's fascinating because Youngstown and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania are far apart. They're probably about 300 miles apart from each other, and they have the identical UHF television numbers. And before digitization, I guess it played a distinct thing, and that's where, yeah, that makes sense. So 21 and 27 and 33 go well together. They don't bother each other. Okay, so the intermixture problem. So Pittsburgh was one, Columbia, South Carolina was another, and Fresno and Bakersfield had each a VHF station back in the 50s. Okay, I don't know how many of you knew that Fresno or Bakersfield had a VHF station back in the, okay. And they lost it because their politicians weren't as powerful as the ones from Pittsburgh or from South Carolina, where Strom Thurmond was from. And so perhaps, I didn't get into this, I didn't find out why, but some of these VHF stations fought the intermixture problem. The de-intermixture was, let's make them all either all VHF or all UHF. And Strom Thurmond liked segregation, so he liked having that VHF station. He probably had money in the station, who knows. So the politics, I didn't really get into it, but it's interesting that some places like Fresno and Bakersfield got de-intermixtured and all UHF. Pittsburgh, nope, didn't happen. In fact, Pittsburgh eventually went all VHF. And Columbia, South Carolina, till the day that they went digital, had that Channel 10 on NBC, and all the rest were UHF. Okay, so unfair competition, that was the reason. So going back to the same slide again, just to sort of a repeat of having to convert. And so there's the mention of if you have just one VHF station in a market and a bunch of other UHFs trying to compete, the solution is kill the VHF. Just put it out of this misery and move it to a UHF frequency. Okay, so it didn't happen in, did you get Madison as a child?
Nope.
Nope, okay, that was too far. But they had Channel 3, and then everything else was UHF. And it, to this day, it's called Channel 3, but who knows what it's on. So many stations and battles and people, lobbying in Washington to keep their frequencies. So this was the Bakersfield de-intermixture. Okay. And this was the Fresno de-intermixture. So I'm using just an advertisement from, go back, the advertisement from the old one. So this was an NBC affiliate on Channel 10. Somewhere along the timeline, it went to ABC on Channel 23. And then this one here was a CBS station on 12. It stayed CBS when it moved to Channel 30, but then sometime in the 70s or 80s, they switched, and 30 became ABC owned and operated. Okay? So some of you might be familiar that way back, you could own 5 VHF stations if you were a television network. Anybody could own 5 VHF stations, and they allowed them to have 2 UHF stations as sort of a spare. Well, that's the spare. Channel 30 is owned by ABC to this day. Now those rules probably are completely defunct. Everything is, UHF is actually better for digital TV, I've heard, that VHF has issues. Okay, and then here's just some other earlier ones in California, just to make the story a little more interesting. KMJ was the newspaper's station. The Bee, the Sacramento Bee, owned the station, and so there's the Bee. And then Scranton has, for me, was the most interesting UHF station to read about, and then we'll go back to San Francisco. But Scranton theirs was the first to go 1 million watts. They were the first station in town, and is that legible, where it says 1953, first TV station? And they were the only UHF station to carry the Rose Bowl parade in Pasadena in color when NTSC became the legal system in the country. And so they actually transmitted it in color on the first day, the only UHF station to do. And it's a UHF island, so all the stations in the town are all UHF. We're all UHF. So, and there's mountains around, so it keeps New York City and Philadelphia out of range. So, many of you may have heard of KSAN Channel 32. I think it died in the 50s. It carried a lot of sports. It would have been a popular station to receive, but there were already plenty of VHF. So there was 4, 5, and 7, and 9. 9 was very sporadic because it was classroom television, educational. But 4, 5, and 7 were already going strong. This was an independent TV station. And it's sort of the forerunner of the final wave of UHF, which is big cities getting UHF stations. It struggled and struggled, and it did finally go off the air, and it came back as KNEW later. Again, you had to get your special antenna, and this lone independent, the stats read that there are about 40,000 sets to get the station, which isn't bad, you know, considering that everything else was VHF in the Bay Area. This station, well, it left the air though, so it went from 54 to 58, and it had a lot of sports programming on it listed in the TV guide, and they advertised a lot for sports. It came back unrelated ownership as KNEW, which didn't last all that long either. The station got kicked around, so people were passing off Channel 32. Channel 38 was another kind of ghostly Bay Area TV station. The big ones, I think, were 44 and 20. And 36 down in San Jose. Those were the big 3 UHF stations that really had better success.
54 later.
54 was, yeah, public. PBS down in San Jose. Now it's owned by KQED. But KDK doesn't own everything. Okay, so the final phase is sort of the normalization where all the TVs were required, according to the All Channel Act, to receive UHF, okay? And that's what triggered, that's what triggered the growth of UHF in these non-UHF cities, these non-UHF islands. These are the forerunners, okay? You've all heard of Univision, or Univision, and these were the 2 stations that started what was called the Spanish International Network, which later became Univision. And one was in San Antonio, and the other was down in LA on Channel 41. Now, the bonus question is, KWEX, where do you think they came up with that idea for that call sign? Uh-oh, he knows.
I'm guessing they turned the M upside down.
Good guess, but not. Nope. It's XEW, Mexico City, in reverse. Nutty things. It's one of those things you find out on Wikipedia and someone claims there's no way of documenting it, but nevertheless, these stations predated the All-Channel Act, and they're still around today. They survived because of a special niche audience of Spanish language viewers. So the All-Channel Act came into force in April of 1964. And at the start of the new year of 1965, our television set took up a new habit. It was a VHF-only GE from the 50s, and it took up a new habit called smoking. And so it was quickly removed from the living room, and my dad went out and bought a Sears portable that had this mysterious knob on the top of it. Okay, what is this knob for? It was like an add-on that the Japanese, because it was made in Japan, had been put on as an afterthought. Like, we've got to be able to sell this TV set because of this All-Channel Act. And so any metropolitan area had already used up all the VHF frequencies, but there was enough people there to view an independent station. Sony jumped on board with this by putting on what you could call the kludge converter. It's like they built this little UHF converter that slaps on the side of the TV set, screws on permanently, and is wired into it somehow. And so I would love to have that TV set. This museum needs to have this TV set. So it's a 1963 model that they updated for the, and you can find them on eBay. You can find the VHF only model. I think one time I saw them selling just the UHF converter. But I just love the appearance of that sort of bow tie looking antenna up there. It just looks really cool. It's very cool. It's a very cool TV. Yeah, it's got a Sputnik look. And then the Singer Corporation did the same thing by putting it on the bottom of the set. Okay, so these are two slap-on UHF converters that actually worked. So from 64 onwards, after this All-Channel Act, each big city started to add UHF to the program listings. TV Guide was really behind on this one. I actually paid $10 for a TV Guide from Chicago that's dated late 1964, and WCIU came on the air, channel 26, in February of 64. So this TV Guide had already had about 8 or 9 months of full knowledge that there's this UHF station out there, and they don't list it. There's no listing. It's just a comment below. Can you read the comment? Is it visible? Okay. So, and it's a commercial UHF station. It wasn't a classroom education station.
Yeah, at first all they showed was an aquarium. I remember that.
The aquarium?
Yeah, there wasn't any program.
We visited our cousins, and we saw a bird in a cage with the Sears logo on it, rotating on a turntable, wondering, what is this? Let's just watch Channel 9. Clink. Yeah. The Yule log, yes, the Yule log. So really strange kind of things. So from birth to age 10, I lived in Philadelphia. Father had gotten this new TV set because the other one was toast, and it had the UHF tuner on it. And we discovered in 1965, my brother came running, and I said, I got a new channel on the TV. I got a new channel on the TV. And we were looking at it, and we saw this ident. It's the one on the left. And then he found the bow tie. We had the original box still. Set. We'd only had the set for about a month. And he found the bow tie, and we clipped it on to the screws on the back, and boom, the station was as clear as a bell. Pun intended. Okay, that was their Liberty Bell logo. Out here, maybe all you UHF fans in the Bay Area might remember Channel 44, KBHK. It was Kaiser Broadcasting. And I remember we lived in the Bay Area for our short 3 years on the peninsula, and then moved to Philadelphia. And it blew me away when Channel 48, which was still on the air at the time, said, "This is Dr. Don Rose." And I'm going like, "Whoa, he's from San Francisco." And so the station in San Francisco and in Cleveland and in Philadelphia and in Chicago on 32 and in Detroit, those were the Kaiser stations. Oh, and then Boston. And they probably all used Dr. Don Rose's voice to do the segues. Yes?
Yeah, Channel 44, when they came on the air, they used the old NBC building, 420 Taylor Street. That's where their studios were.
The NBC studio?
The NBC headquarters were 420 Taylor Street.
Uh-huh.
KPO, KGO era, that's where they started, KBHK, 1967 or 68. They used that building to start Channel 44.
Okay. And I'll tell you one about 48 in a minute. Yes?
Yeah, and in Cleveland it was Channel 61.
61.
No, they didn't use Don Rhodes. The Ghoul.
The Ghoul, okay.
Came from Cleveland, and they were using him for the promos in Cleveland.
And the Ghoul aired here in the early 70s.
Yeah,
and he was wearing a T-shirt that had the 61. And when we had moved from Western Pennsylvania, where we got Youngstown, and from there to here, and he was wearing this T-shirt, and I said, well, I've DX'd that TV station before out of Cleveland, because sometimes it would come in on 61, and he had the big 61 on his shirt that was in, the little television box. Chemo.
Just like that, except it was 61.
Right, and 44 and 32.
Yeah, not KBS.
Yeah, WKBF Cleveland, WKBD Detroit, KHBK, whatever here. You recognize the stop sign from U.S. Communications, Chemo 20. Ever remember seeing Chemo 20? Same company. And I can jump ahead and show you. There's Chemo 20.
Oh, there's Carol Doda as the perfect.
And Carol Doda is the perfect 36. Hey, you're watching the perfect 36. So I was in middle school for 3 years on the peninsula watching Bay Area TV. That's why I have a memory of it. And even Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, when they got Channel 53 again, a second iteration, not related to the original one, they were owned by the same company as U.S. Communications. So this was the TV Guide listing, and can you see Superman there? Yeah. This was a September 1st, 1965, and that I remember watching the very first episode of Superman as it's listed there. It's where, he comes to Earth, shows him growing up, and then he gets a job at the Daily Planet, and that was the first episode of the old George Reeves Superman. Yes?
I have a comment about that. That was a rerun. I think the original Superman.
Yeah, it's a rerun.
57.
Well, no, it's a rerun. Yeah, the original Superman is like 53 or 54. Yeah. No, that's a rerun in 1965. But I'd always wanted to watch Superman, and we couldn't get it. We didn't have it on our VHF, and so that's just sort of my memory of watching. Same with the Mickey Mouse Club. That would have been a rerun. Yeah. So that's what UHF stations did. They reran things and movies. And they had good monster movies. Okay, so that was my personal memory, that and the sewing machine causing interference on VHF. And so here's the Bay Area ones. That's the one from Pittsburgh. And that's it. Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Nat.
Protests? Questions?
When did those little circular UHF antennas appear? The little ring?
Well, my grandmother's TV set had one on it, and that was a 1965 Sears, a little one. And then we had a bigger Sears, and we had the bow tie. So I would bet the circles came out in the second iteration of the 60s, the mid 60s. Yes.
I grew up in Sacramento, and Sacramento originally had a Channel 40 during the middle 50s that lasted until about 58 and folded. When they came up with the all-channel rule, a new
40
business came in and took the Channel 40 allocation, and they were giving away those loop antennas as free. If you just went to anybody that sold TVs and they would give you one of those and try and sell you a new TV at the same time.
Is it
Muntz, by the way.
KXTL Channel 40? Was
Yes.
that when it was
It still is.
back? Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, and so a lot of these, so Sacramento, San Francisco, Philadelphia, when the All Channel Act came, there was this kind of UHF boom in the big urban areas. Yes?
Channel 44, first one on the air in January 1968. The first program at 6 p.m. was The Honeymooners.
The Honeymooners, okay. Okay, so,
Not only that, guess who else they hired? They also hired Don Sherwood, KSFO, Don Sherwood, to do the news. Carter B. Smith had an evening newscast in 44.
okay.
So anchored the news. There's nothing available on video, anything like that. That's an interesting history of KPHK.
So I was 9 years old. Channel 29 was already on the air when my brother discovered it, causing great excitement within the family. And it was kind of cool. It was like being the only kid with a TV on the block because we had the only TV that received UHF, and they had kids program on it, and old monster movies like the original Frankenstein movie, and Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, and a lot of fun old movies out of the 40s and 50s. And we were the only ones that could get it. So people would come down to our house sometimes when they saw good things in the listings until they got their UHF converters or new TVs. Channel 48 came on September 1st, and I remember waiting for it to hit the air, and all they did was play this music, and they showed their number, and then at 12 o'clock noon, the first show I ever saw on 48 was Hickory Dickory Dock. It was a cartoon show for kids. So Hickory Dickory Dock. So it was the Honeymooners out here, Hickory Dickory Dock, the Flintstones in Cleveland, I think, with a ghoul. The ghoul.
When did they sign up? As I said, when KBHK first went on the air, they signed on just before 6 p.m.
Yeah. Very late.
So later on, they
Very late, yeah. The Philadelphia stations like to come on at around noon, as I remember.
And this was a turnkey RCA station. Because RCA had offices at 420 Taylor Street.
Uh-huh.
That was original NBC movie, so we got to deal with them. Complete RCA package, the TK44 cameras, CCU, everything RCA translator, everything was RCA when they first went.
Okay, I guess that should wrap up the UHF topic. By the way, I think maybe Nat has more television call signs floating around in his brain than anybody else on the planet. I'm not sure.
No. The guy at the FCC had more than me.
Next, I think we invite John back to the next podium. We have to hear the rest of the story on this camera, the camera control unit.
What we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about hooking the camera to the CCU, the camera control unit. Most of these cameras, when you get them, you find them, they don't have the CCU. CCU is not eye candy like the camera. And so, if you're lucky to get one, like some of you guys do, I was not lucky. So what I did, of course, in my head, something's not complete unless you make it work. First, let's go back to 1952. What was on the air in 1952? There were 3 stations on the air, KRON, KPIX, and KGO. Each one of them was broadcasting from a different site. San Bruno, Mark Hobson's over at Sutro. 2 of them were using RCA 5 kilowatt transmitters, 5 kilowatt peak visual with moderately gain antennas. So they're only up around 30, 40 kilowatts ERP. The KGO was using a GE transmitter. I don't know anything about it, but I assume it was a 4 kilowatt unit, and their ERP was 27 kilowatts. So KPIX was the first one on, and in 49, 2 other stations came on. The programming, here's what you would find on a Sunday night in 1952 in San Francisco. We had ABC, CBS, NBC, and the 4th network was Dumont. Now Dumont aired Captain Video. Everybody remember Captain Video? I saw there was on YouTube. I saw a clip of Captain Video the other day, and I didn't remember how bad it was. If you think the Ed Wood films are bad, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, you ought to take a look at Captain Video. I can't imagine I was even watching it. It was awful.
I'm going to check that.
Okay, so the question is, what in the world does the CCU do? CCU takes this video from the camera. You can't put that into a monitor or anything like that. There's no sync pulse. It's not, and turns it into this beautiful NTSC pulse signal. And so that's what the CCU does. It takes it cleans up the video coming from the camera. And inserts the syncing, blanking, and the setup pulses. I'll show you in a minute if you don't want to set up pulses. It cleans up all the transients. The CCU also supplies power to the camera, supplies the sync pulses to the camera. It corrects the video amplitude and provides further control of the camera itself. And you notice some of these controls on the front here, particularly one of the knobs, are the ones that the operator in the control room, or if this is a field camera, the operator out in the field is adjusting probably continuously the parameters of the camera, the beam, the target potential, and that sort of thing. So that's what the CCU does. Now, this is not my first CCU. This is a CCU that I put together a few years ago for my iconoscope camera, which gives, by the way, a beautiful picture. I've got 3 iconoscope cameras, all operational. And this is complete, everything's in it, including power supplies, sync, a generator, and the whole business. So that is that's the CCUs that I made a number of years ago. Let's go back to that picture I showed you this morning of the CCUs for the field cameras. This is for the TK10, TK30 from 1946, but this is what has to be put together. Again, that's the mixer, that's the master monitor, power supplies, and sync generator down underneath. The thing that you see in front of me is this guy right here, and what I decided to do with the CCU that I built for my iconoscope camera was all solid state, very wide band ICs, soldered right onto copper substrates to keep them stable. I decided that I've got a nice vacuum tube camera. I wanted a nice vacuum tube CCU and follow exactly the RCA schematic. Kevin was kind enough, as I showed you, to give me the full schematics for the RCA, for the CCU. It was actually for the studio CCU, almost the same as the CCU for the field, and I decided to copy it exactly. And so what you're seeing here is the signal path, the power supplies, regulators, and all that sort of thing. Breaking that down just a little bit, in the yellow is the signal path for the video. You come in through a couple of 6AH6s. The RCA really seem to like that tube because they seem to be using it in all their video amplifiers. You notice that there are 4 6AL5s in this thing. Double diodes, which play a very important role in processing that video signal. Over here in the red are 3 12AT7 dual triodes. Everything else here is all my own original circuitry. I needed some pulse amplifiers, some pulse drivers, and that sort of thing. And so I didn't need everything that was in the original RCA, but these were sufficient to power everything else I need. And then everything in blue were power supplies and power supply regulators. Here's what's going on in the CCU itself. There's really 3 sections in it. There's an input amplifier, there's an output amplifier, and then there's a signal conditioning amplifier. The input amplifier is very simple. There's 2 stages. And don't forget, every time you run a video through a amplifier, you are actually inverting the video. Instead of black negative, it becomes white negative. You run it through another tube, another amplifier, it's black again. And you notice there's actually an even number of amplifiers in this chain. So we're always keeping black negative, except at one place in the middle. Okay, the blanking signal is actually added into the signal in that first stage of amplifier, and I'll show you in a minute why we do it there. The output amplifier is nothing more than a very low impedance driver using fairly heavy-duty, powerful tubes to drive the video output. This is a 75 ohm resistor. At the exit, the output impedance of this amplifier is very low, and also it's very wide band. And to keep the thing stable, the feedback network around this wideband amplifier, that's the feedback network, is kind of complicated to keep phase stability in that amplifier so it doesn't start oscillating and keep it even. Now, also at the feedback output, we add in the sync pulses and this setup, which is the difference between black and blacker than black as part of the video signal. All the video gain is taken care of right here at the beginning. And that's the only gain control in the whole system. And it's really nice to see that, do a fade to black, and you can see the whole signal just collapse around the video signal right down to black level. It's really kind of nice to see that. In the middle of this, though, is where all the processing is taking place. You see there are 1, 2, 3 6AL5 clamps, and 1 6AL5 clippers, 4 6AL5 double diodes. And so what are they doing? Here is the makeup of the signal. Here's the sync tip. Here's that little thing that's called the setup. It's sort of a misleading term, but that's between the blacker and the black is the setup value, and that's one of the pots that you actually tweak on this thing to set that little value. Here's how it works. Here's the video coming from the camera right here. There it is. And right in here is all that noise. It doesn't look very noisy here, but it is. That's this point right here. You add the sync signal to it, and so if you add them together, the sum will be smaller or more negative than this black clipping level. And that's how you clip out all that stuff that's in the sync interval. And so it just cleans that up, and and just returns it to a black level right there. Then you add in the sync and the setup pulses. So that's how you are processing the signal. You first clip out that noisy part, and then you add back in where you've zeroed it out, you add the setup and the sync pulses. Now, in the clamp circuits, here's a typical RC coupled amplifier. You have a Pendleton plate load into resistor, goes into the grid of your next tube. Usually you have a resistor that goes to ground at that point to hold the grid potential. But look at this. It sort of goes to an open circuit. These diodes here are normally non-conducting. So this whole part of the circuit into the grid is actually floating. It turns out to be more or less a sample and hold circuit. Okay? During the sync pulse, the pulses come in, turn these diodes on, and then connect whatever voltage potential is on this point right here, connects it to that and charges the capacitor to that voltage. And there are 3 stations in the processor that are doing that. Why do that? Well, back in the early days, apparently there was a lot of problem like hum coming in from network or from camera or something like that. So your actual video signal would look like this, contaminated with a lot of, say, 60 cycle hum on it, okay? What the purpose of a circuit like that is to actually re-zero the video signal to black at that point, and so that signal looks like that can now be reprocessed just like that by taking that low frequency component out. That coupling cap actually is not a large cap, it's actually a rather small cap, like a 001, 002. But it's enough to hold the charge for each 63 microsecond line. Okay. Well, I can kind of, as I was putting there the amplifiers together, I was I put in some nice network analyzer, checking the response to 10 megahertz, checking the group delay, for example, up to 10 megahertz, which we sort of briefly mentioned earlier, to maintain the phase coherence of the video signal. Here's the sync generator that I'm using. It's a Videotech Very nice thing. I found this on eBay. It gives you every possible sync pulse that you would we would ever want. Blanking, chroma. This is actually a color subcarrier generator. And let's take a look at the waveforms. We have an interlaced signal. We have an odd and even field, 262 and a half lines per field. But in fact, we have actually 4 fields, not 2 fields, to get through where you actually come back to the first field, which is the continuation of the 4th field. So it's not 2 fields bringing it back, it's 4 fields. Does anybody see why? Take a look here. Color superframe. What's going on here? And I didn't know this until I wrote this up. The phase of the color subcarrier between the first odd field and the next odd field has reversed 180. Okay, so you see, it's 180, 180, 180, 180. And so even though for a black and white transmission, everything repeats in 2 fields, if you include the subcarrier, the burst phase, you have to go through 4 to come back. I didn't know that. Anybody know that? You know that.
I was a broadcast engineer.
Okay, yeah. I mean, but this was a bit of an eye opener.
But why did they do that?
Why
not come back in phase?
Eye opener to me. Okay, we're gonna get a little bit of math here, and let's talk about the standards. In the old monochrome standard, the 60 hertz was the reference because that was the line frequency. In fact, some of the very early signals actually used line frequency. Now, line frequency is not always 60 cycles, and if you're if you're in a district that's served by a different power company, it would probably be a little different. So eventually, it went a little bit more stable. It was a crystal oscillator, but here's how they define the 15750 or horizontal. Which is number of lines, 525 divided by 2, which gives you interlay scanning. That factor of 2 in the denominator means interlay scanning. But you notice in the denominator a product of small prime numbers. And the way these sync generators work, they use vacuum tube dividers to divide a high frequency. They say they started off at 31.5 kilohertz and then count that down to 60 hertz. Back in those days, vacuum tube multivibrator frequency dividers were really touchy. And it wouldn't be too unusual for them to actually start dividing by some other number. Or if they're flaky, you get a lot of phase noise out of them. And so these very small numbers were selected. The 441 standard was 3 times 3 times 7 by 7. The 625 standard is 5 to the 4th, or 25 squared. These are all products of small prime numbers. And that's where all these 323, I forget what that was, but they're all products of small prime numbers. Let's go to the color frequency. Now the reference frequency is 4.5 megahertz. Does anybody know why that's the case now? Why is it 4.5 megahertz? What is 4.5 megahertz? 4.5 megahertz is the splitting between the audio and the visual carrier. Okay? That's the splitting between the audio and the visual carrier out of the transmitter. And when they started working, say, with 15750 for a color standard, they found there was a moire pattern or interference that you'd see on the screen between the 15750 and the 4.5 megahertz. So what they did is they found that they took sort of the closest frequency that could be related to the 4.5 megahertz divided by an integer, 286, and that brought the horizontal frequency down from 15750 to 15734. That's where that came from, and what that did is that eliminated this moire pattern. The question is, if we had stuck with 15750, could they have moved that spacing between the transmitter audio and the video? It turns out to be 0.1%, which would have been 4.5 kilohertz. If they moved that frequency by 4.5 kilohertz, we wouldn't have this 59.94 vertical scan frequency, which is kind of crazy. You know,
compatibility with existing sets.
And the TVs probably would have accepted a slight 4.5 change between the video and audio carriers.
Split sound sets were inkier in that regard than the inter-carrier sets.
The inter-carrier sets would have been fine. Split sound, but that's only a fraction of the bandwidth of a split sound. Oh, yeah, split sound. Of inter-carrier.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so why? Let me go. Oh, anyway, okay, let's keep going here. Now we need a new burst frequency. Okay, we've established what the horizontal frequency is, 15734. And we wound up with this frequency, 3579545. Where did that come from? The NTSC a crew that was actually looking at various colors parameters and having to approve what eventually became the NTSC color standard, not the RCA or the Philico or the Westinghouse. They had a bunch of expert viewers that would view a color signal on a CRT that had various frequencies that would fit into a system that used small prime numbers, anywhere from about 3.5 up to about 3.8 megahertz. These were the color burst frequencies that were looked at the time. If you go too high, then you're getting too close to the end of the channel and you start losing color resolution because your color sideband can't go that far. And if it gets too low, you are probably starting to get more chromograin. So that frequency, the expert observers said that looks like it's it, but it turned out they didn't see a whole lot of difference between the other frequencies that were chosen. It was a very small amount of difference that they can see. But that's how we wound up with 35.3579. Okay. So you see the number, but there's a factor of 2 here in the denominator too. Why is that there? That's there because the next line that comes to the screen, the chromograin will have the opposite sign. White becomes black, black becomes white for the chromograin, and it sort of tends to even out. Even though CRTs are nonlinear, that was the idea, and it's sort of partially successful. Okay, anyway, we put all these equations together right here. This is our burst frequency as a function of the vertical. Vertical is our field rate. You see a factor of 4 in the denominator, and that explains our previous slide, why it takes 4 fields to come all the way back and repeat. I didn't know that.
I didn't know why.
Now you know. Now you know. Okay, there it is. That's the lesson. That's the math.
I knew why and that it reduced noise, but I did not understand.
That's the math lesson for today. Okay. Anyway, okay, now we're going to get to the actual construction of this guy. And bought a chassis. That's the only thing I had to buy. Everything else came from my own stock. And we kind of laid it out. Didn't quite look like that, but it wasn't too far off. And here I am kind of putting this thing together. I kind of put together like a Heath kit. You know, I'd get all the components for each little module and put them in and test each one. Because things are coming from stock, I had to check each one to make sure it wasn't bad. And solder them in. Here's what the back end of this thing looks like. There's actually 10 cable connectors on this guy, 6 BNCs for the drive signals, blanking signals, the raw video out and processed video out. I've got these 2 humongous, great big, heavy power supplies that are powering the whole thing to the camera, a convenience outlet. I'm not connected. I'm not counting that as the 10, and the 120 volts input. From the front, looks like this. These are the controls that use a lot. It depends on what the camera is looking at. These controls are more or less set up, and forget there are some more controls up on top that control some of these other pulses that are put in. Here's during the testing phase. The damn thing actually worked the first time I turned it on, which was amazing. It took about 2 months to put this thing together. Here I'm looking at actually 500 kilohertz sine wave test signal just going in. The camera is over there somewhere else. And it takes that 500 kilohertz test signal and puts all the right pulse and all the sync and blanking pulses and all that in it. And here you can see for the next slide, the video is getting better. This is now the video actually coming out of the camera control unit. It's now got all the sync pulse and everything. You can now put this on a conventional monitor. The only other monitor I had before all this was the one that was in the camera. So here's kind of the setup as it stands today. Here are these humongous power supplies. Each one of them has got six L6s in parallel in the pass regulator. We're running between the two. We're running about 0.6 of an ampere into the camera. There's the sync generator, the line monitor, and a couple of video monitors. And here's the tube count. Camera's got 20 tubes in it. The viewfinder's got 19. This guy here has 23 tubes in it. The line monitor, 33. You wind up with 119 tubes running this whole business. And it heats the place up. I mean, so there are 8 power supplies, 6 power supplies on the CCU, and the 2 external lambdas, which are supplying this really heavy current that's going up to the camera. The camera is now photographing itself. I've turned the camera around and taking a look at the equipment here. We're running almost a kilowatt. Almost a kilowatt off the power line. Very nice looking sync pulse. But I have to mention Chuck Ferris. He helped me with my TK76. He sent me a complete original RCA documentation of the whole thing, and to get my TK76 color camera working. I've been in contact with him fairly often now, and he recently moved, by the way, from Alabama to Florida. He told me that everything right now is in storage in Florida. Nothing's working, but he was giving me a lot of very good feedback, and I got him all pepped up, and he says, I've got to go back and get my cameras running again. I hope he does. But I didn't ask for anything from him because I didn't need anything. But I wanted to let him know that this camera, he's got somewhere between 50 and 20 various cameras, CCUs, and the whole thing. And I think a couple of them working. He told me it took him a year to get this TK31 running. Took me actually only about 3 months to get this working. Now, the last picture I'm going to show you is the actual picture from the camera. I've run it into a capture. This is the digital. And so you can actually see, not photographing the face of a CRT, but what this video actually looks like. Sharp as a tack. Look at that. Sharp as a tack. It's good. These things are really capable of pretty good resolution. Look at that. A good grayscale, and so that's it. That's it.
All right, thank you, John. What a journey.
We're back on.
I'll start with one question, and we'll make room for more as well.
Please go.
This morning, you talked about on the camera that the camera operator can set the blanking on both the left and the right.
The camera operator can set the blanking on the viewfinder.
Well, on the
viewfinder.
But not on the video.
He can change the window of the viewfinder.
Right.
But he doesn't set anything coming out of the camera.
Sure.
All this is going on in the viewfinder and has nothing to do with the camera.
Understood. Okay, that was my real question.
Okay.
Those things need to become standard eventually. But why would he want to change his viewfinder?
Well, that's a good question.
Like
you would actually want to have the window wide enough, because when you set up the scan widths on the tube, you want to scan right up to where you can see just the little rounded corners. If you go too small, then you're actually using that part of the target that if later on you want to expand it, you may have a shadow of that area that's well used. So you want to move those right where you can start to see. And when you look at some of the old tapes or the old kinescopes, you can actually see a lot of the cameras are using. You can see just that little bit of cutoff right at the 4 corners where they're right up against the target. Any questions, please?
When the field camera was actually used in the field, did they mount the CCU and the supplies and everything else in a truck?
Yes. Yes. Then they microwave or some sort of yes.
Yeah, but when they so the camera was connected to the stuff in the truck
exactly.
with a long cable.
That's correct.
Right? And then they had to have an antenna on the top.
That's one way
to
to do
it
it.
Back to the station.
You are correct. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Okay, thanks, guys.
I got one more question.
No, this is okay. Go ahead.
So this morning, when you were explaining the orthicon, you talked about how the very low energy beam will either turn around or not turn around. That sounded like that should be a sharp threshold. So how do you get this beautiful grayscale on that particular phenomenon?
Some of the beam would turn around, and some of it sort of turned around. There was enough modulation. That's the point of these pots right here really control all of that. You set the target at 2 volts above something else in the camera. And when you change these controls, you can really see the picture change. You can turn negative. You can see all sorts of things happening. And the adjustment on this target control, you're only varying at about plus or minus 5 volts. And you can make the picture go away on either side of that really critical target potential. But the variation of the charge on the target due to the variations of light hitting it is enough to modulate the beam that turns around some. Because don't forget, let's say you're in a gray, the beam is going to neutralize that smaller charge that's on the glass target, and then the rest of it's going to come back. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get a grayscale.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks, guys. This was fun.
All right, very good. All right, our last item for the day is yet another change of pace to something very different than what John just showed. So Fred is going to explain to us a little bit about...
It was Chuck Ferris that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
My ex-wife and I went to Fremont to visit her grandmother. And on the right-hand side of the street, we spotted a junk store with a monitor top refrigerator in it. So we turned around and walked into the store, and I was looking straight ahead and to the right. I looked to the left, and there's a TV-37 Pilot. I went, so I walked up to the guy. I said, how much is that? He said, $150. I said, well, 3 of the knobs are missing. So how about 75? So he took it. Well, we took it home. I took it apart. Nobody had been in it. It was a straight recap, tune, adjust, and all of that. And it is still working fine. And so after that, a couple of years, Tom Hawthorne gave me a box of 16mm films because I'm a film collector. And so I went through and took the couple that I wanted out of there, and the rest went to Urbanski Film in Chicago for credit. And I watched one of them, and then I watched this other one. Since there was no beginning or end titles, I didn't know what it was. I thought, oh, Ozzie and Harriet. So we got into the show. I looked, and there was a Pilot TV-37. Now, what are the odds against finding the TV and a couple of years later finding the show? Very, very slim. So that's my story, and I stick to it.
We'd like you to spell toothpaste. Oh, well, that's easy. Toothpaste. A-N-T-I-Z-Y-M-E. Antizyme toothpaste.
May I be the first to congratulate you, sir?
Listerine, the most widely used antiseptic in the world, and Antizyme, the first all-day anti-enzyme toothpaste, present The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, starring the entire Nelson family. Here is Ozzie, who plays the part of Ozzie Nelson. And, of course, his lovely wife, Harriet, as Harriet Nelson. The older of the Nelson boys, David, appears as David Nelson. And his younger brother, the irrepressible Ricky, played by Ricky Nelson. The Nelsons' next-door neighbor, Thorny, is played by Don DeFore.
books on dog training, Pa?
Dog training? No, I don't think we do. Your mother just uses psychology on me.
Don't tell me somebody's giving you a dog.
Well, it's for Mr. Thornberry's dog.
Oh, since when do the Thornberrys have a dog?
Well, they don't, not exactly. See, it belongs to Mr. Thornberry's brother-in-law. He's keeping it for a few days. He told me he'd give me $1 for each trick I could teach him. The dog, that is.
Well, it sounds like an easy way to make some money.
Oh, I'm not so sure. Knowing Thorny, there must be a catch somewhere.
Did you ever try to train a dog, Pa?
Well, remember I told you when your Uncle Al and I were small boys, we used to have this bulldog named Tiger, and we taught him a few tricks.
Like what?
Well, he used to go out and get the paper for us every morning and bring it in.
That sounds like a pretty good trick, Pa.
Well, yeah, only thing, though, there wasn't much left of the paper after he brought it in.
That isn't such a good trick after all.
That's the same thing my father said.
There's Mr. Thornberry with the dog right now. Come on, Pa.
Don't forget your coat. It's kind of cold out.
Hi, Mr. Thornberry.
Hi, Rick. Rick, I want you to meet Walter. Walter, this is Ricky. And shake hands with Uncle Archie.
Hello, Walter.
Isn't he a beaut, Hans?
Yeah.
Comes from an old racing family. Would you believe this dog's got a lot of greyhound in him?
Frankly, I believe he's got a lot of things in him.
Can he do any tricks, Mr. Thornberry?
Oh, sure, Rick. Watch this. Walter, play dead. Play dead. See there? Hasn't moved a muscle.
You know, I have a hunch that particular trick comes kind of easy to Walter.
There you are, Rick. And remember, every trick you teach him, you get $1.
Thanks, Mr. Thornberry. Come on, Walter.
Now there goes a real intelligent dog. Look at the way he steps smartly along. Head held high.
Thorny, you pawned the dog off on us. Be satisfied, will you? Don't overplay it.
I don't know what makes you so suspicious of me, Oz.
Maybe it's because I know you so well.
Well, say, you know, don't you, there's an awfully good fight on television tonight.
Yeah, I know, for the state championship.
Yeah, I've been planning on watching it on my TV set, but suddenly went on the blink.
Oh, that's a shame. It's going to be a great fight, too.
Yeah. How's your television set working?
Oh, swell. Say, why don't you come over to our house and watch it?
For goodness sake, Oz, I thought you'd never ask me.
Well, you know you're always welcome, old boy.
Thanks, Oz. Well, say, did you hear what happened to Doc Williams and Wally Dipple?
No, what happened to him?
Well, it seems they got roped into going to a violin recital at the women's club tonight.
Wow, how did that happen?
Well, they don't seem to know. The wives sort of sprung it on them all of a sudden.
Wives can be pretty tricky at times. I'm sure glad Harriet isn't that type.
Neither is Catherine. She knows I've been looking forward to the fight, so naturally she wouldn't dream of asking me to go to a violin recital.
Neither would Harriet.
How do we know they wouldn't?
Yeah, how do we know they wouldn't?
It isn't as if this were just an ordinary fight. It's for the state championship.
And how often do they have state championship fights?
Only about twice a month, that's all. Look, Hans, we got to do something about this.
But no, before you get excited, of course, we don't know for sure that the girls are going to ask us to take them.
Well, there's no use in taking any chances. Doc and Wally only got the bad news today.
Maybe I better get back in the house and see if I can find out anything definite. In a sly, subtle way, of course.
Okay, Oz. I think I'll go into my house and practice crying.
I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah, see you later, Oz.
Oh, all right, Pop. I've been looking for you. Oh, what's on your mind, son?
Oh, I need some money for some notebook paper.
Oh. Well, I think I have some change here.
I need some folding money.
Oh. I don't know why they even bother to make this stuff anymore. How much do you need, son?
$5.
What is this, gold leaf paper?
No, just 25 cents of it is for the notebook paper. The rest is for a date I have tomorrow night.
Oh. Gee, I don't think I have $5 with me. Wait a minute, your mother's bag is over here.
I can pay you back by the end of the week.
Oh, that's okay. Pay your mother. Yeah, son.
Thanks a lot, Pa.
Yes, it's right here, Harriet. I took $5 out of it. David wanted some money for a date, and he wanted to buy some notebook paper for his violin recital. I must have violin recital on the brain. Thorny told me the most amazing thing. There's a violin recital in town tonight.
Yes, I know.
Listen to this, Harriet. Doc Williams and Wally Dipple have to go to the darn thing. Their wives are dragging them to it. Just sprung it on them at the last minute.
Well, it's supposed to be very good.
Yes, I know, but there's a state championship fight on television tonight. I said to Thorny, boy, am I lucky to have a wife like Harriet. She'd never do a thing like that. You'd insist that I stay home and watch the fight on television, wouldn't you?
Would I?
Well, of course you would, dear. And you know why?
Why?
Because you're understanding, you're generous, you're considerate. Believe me, dear, you're one in a million. Imagine tricking their husbands into taking them to a violin recital.
Well, what makes you think they were tricked into it?
Why else would they go to a thing like that? But I don't have to worry about you, dear, because you're more than just a wife. You're a pal. Thank you, dear, for being just you.
Ozzy.
I want to see Thorny.
You did give the $5 to David.
Oh, yes. I want to see Thorny about that. Thorny?
Hi, what'd you find out?
Well, it's not too encouraging. I found 4 tickets to the violin recital in Harriet's bag. Evidently, the Nelsons and Thornberrys have some plans for tonight.
I was afraid of that. Now what do we do?
There's a possibility Harriet may not have the nerve to go through with it. See, I did quite a bit of fast talking. She doesn't know I saw the tickets.
What'd you say?
Well, I just used a little psychology. See, in a case like this, the idea is to keep a woman off balance, like a boxer. Jab, dance away. Jab, dance away.
Well, that may be okay with Harriet, but Catherine's got a murderous left hook.
Of course, you know, there's a possibility we could get to the concert and back in time to see the fight. The main event never starts until 10 o'clock.
Are you kidding, Oz? Have you ever been to one of those recitals? Well, it takes those guys an hour and a half just to rousing up the bull. We'll be there till midnight.
Yeah. Of course, as I say, Harriet may not go through with it. Because if I do say so myself, I did quite a bit of fast talking. At least, let's say I stalled it off for a while.
I don't know, Oz. Women are fiendishly clever. She may have seen through this whole thing.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
You know, sometimes they're like a toy with you, like a cat with a mouse.
That's for sure.
Only this time, the mice are going to outsmart the cats. How? How are we going to outsmart them?
Well, I don't know. You were the one who said it.
Well, there must be something we can do. Obviously, they're just waiting for the right moment to spring the tickets on us.
Yeah. Say, here's an idea.
Maybe we better talk in the garage. They're liable to hear us out here.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you have some idea?
Well, I just thought, suppose we simply refuse to go.
Sure. I remember last year Catherine tried to drag me to some concert and I refused to go. I simply told her I had no intentions of going to any concert.
How was the concert?
Not bad at all.
Not bad. You know, as a matter of fact, I'm kind of scared to go back in the house. I figure Harriet might have regained her equilibrium by now, and as soon as I walk in, she'll flash the tickets on me.
Wait a minute, Oz. I think you give me an idea. If the wives don't ask us, we can't be expected to go, right?
Right.
Then all we have to do is avoid them until fight time.
Well, that's a swell idea. Only thing, though, it's impossible.
Are you doubting my plan?
Well, frankly, yes.
Oh, my. Would be pretty tough, especially through dinner.
It'd take 2 tremendously clever guys to pull a stunt like that. In fact, offhand, I can't think of anybody except you and me who could get away with it.
Now, the safest thing to do is to keep out of sight.
That's right. Keep out of sight. And if we can't keep out of sight, keep them off balance. Use our wits.
Well, I'd rather keep out of sight. Best thing to do is to keep moving. Yeah, we better split up. Now, you go first. Now, remember one thing. If you get caught, give them nothing but your name, rank, and serial number.
Roger.
Sit up there. Stay there. Walter. Sit up. Stay. Shake hands. Shake hands. Shake hands. Shake hands. Walter.
Seriously? I have no intention of getting caught. Wait till you see what I got.
What the heck is this?
It's Herb Dunkel's old television set. I borrowed it from him. Come on, let's get in the garage.
What do you figure on doing with that?
Well, I got to thinking, Oz. Catherine and Harriet may not be too happy when they discover they've been tricked out of going to the recital.
Well, that's what's known as a gross understatement.
But we don't have to take any chances now. We can watch the fight right here in the garage.
You mean to say you can actually rig this thing up?
Certainly. Got the aerial here and everything. Last time Catherine got mad at me and I wanted to watch something on television, you know what she did? She painted the screen black. 3 days to get it off.
Oh, well, I don't think Harry to do anything like that.
You never can tell, Oz. But this is a perfect setup. Now we don't even have to face the girls till after the fight.
Yeah, that's a thought, because they're going to be plenty sore. No sense having 2 fights going on at the same time.
Well, come on, help me set it up. Where'd be a good place?
Well, this is obviously too close to the house. How about over on the trunk there?
Yeah, that's good.
I think I have an extension cord around here someplace.
Pretty cute little set, isn't it?
Yeah. What size screen is that anyway?
2.5 inch. But it's a very large 2.5 inch.
Well, there's only one thing worries me about this whole deal. We have to be back in the house for dinner.
I know, Oz. That part of it had me worried, too. But it's all in just being one jump ahead of the girls. You understand how the feminine brain works, don't you?
No, I don't think I do. Do you?
Well, vaguely. Anyway, I know how Catherine always tries to soften me up for something.
Well, how's that?
Well, first of all, she fixes a big dinner. Steak, mashed potatoes, buttered peas, hot rolls. Then she tops the whole deal off with a big slab of apple pie. Then while I'm slumped there in a glassy-eyed stupor, she springs a trap on me.
They're crafty. There's no getting away. Well, the only thing we can do is to start talking at the beginning of dinner. And talk and talk and talk. Don't give the girls a chance to get a word in edgewise. Then as soon as dinner is over, right out of the house.
Right. Just stagger out it as fast as you can.
We're really going to put one over on this time. I think that was probably my grandfather's favorite joke. And for some reason, it always puts me in mind of Hamlet's soliloquy. I'd like to recite that for you now. I recited it earlier at the beginning of dinner, didn't I? Oh, Harriet, may I say this was a delicious dinner. It was just wonderful, dear.
Oh, thank you, dear. Was the steak all right?
Oh, just perfect.
I hope there weren't too many lumps in the mashed potatoes.
No, the mashed potatoes were perfect, and the hot rolls and the buttered peas. It was just a wonderful dinner.
Yeah, it sure was, Mom.
Mom, can I be excused? I got to get back to Walter. Oh, wait a minute, Rick.
Oh, no, I'd like to be excused, too, Harriet.
No, you stay right where you are because I got a surprise for you.
Yeah, well, I want to see Thorny about something.
Look, your very favorite apple pie.
Oh, and this looks delicious, Harriet.
Well, I hope it turned out all right.
Well, it sure smells good. Well, I think I'll take this outside and eat it out there.
Well, where are you going?
I want to see Thorny about something. The dinner was delicious, Harriet. Thanks for everything.
Is it my imagination imagination, or is your father unusually talkative tonight?
Yeah, he sure was.
I couldn't get a word in all through dinner. He seemed to be in such a hurry, too. He rushed out of here without even putting his coat on, and it's cold out tonight.
Well, I sure wish Walter was that lively.
Have you taught Walter any tricks yet?
No, ma'am, not one. Oh, I'll get it.
No, never mind. Thank you, dear. It's probably Doc Williams. You boys help yourself to the pie.
Where is Walter anyway?
Oh, he's upstairs resting. That's the best thing he does. Well, he's the most relaxed dog I've ever seen.
Hello, Harriet.
Oh, hi, Doc. Come on in. My goodness, don't tell me it's cold enough out tonight for earmuffs.
Wait a minute, Harriet. What did you say?
I said, don't tell me it's cold enough out tonight for earmuffs.
Oh, no, it's rather pleasant out for this time of year. I always wear these to violin recitals.
Suppose you came by for the tickets.
Yes, I don't suppose you weren't able to get them.
No, I hate to disappoint you, but I picked them up this afternoon.
I was afraid of that. Where's Oz?
Oh, you had to run over to Thorny's for a minute. I've got tickets right here. At least I think I have.
Don't tell me you've lost them.
No, here they are.
Darn it. Well, I guess this just isn't my night.
I think it's very nice of you to take Helen to the violin recital.
Well, Harriet, when a woman spends practically every day of her life cooped up in a house doing housework, it certainly isn't asking too much of her husband to take her out of an evening to see something she really wants to see. After all, couples should do these things together. Yeah, I think those were her exact words.
Oh, the Dimples tickets are there, too.
Oh, thanks, Harriet. Good night.
Have a good time.
What did you say?
I said have a good time.
How you doing, Oz? Getting everything? It's not too good. Either the reception is bad or some guy with a herringbone coat is standing in front of the camera.
I don't adjustment that works sometimes.
You want to break it?
Well, it works with my set.
Your set is in a repair shop. Begin to learn why. Picture in this darn thing. Wait a minute. I hear voices.
Oh, so it's hide.
No. Some television set. Coming clearer.
Sounds like the fight is started.
Yeah, sounds like a great fight, too.
Left, right. Bend the knees. Left. Slimming the hips, guaranteed to get quick results.
For crying out loud, Oz, you've got the wrong channel.
This is the channel you told me.
Oh, no, here, let me take a whack at it.
Come on now, Bart, Walter. Whoa. Come on, Walter, just one trick. I'll split the $1 with you.
You see anything?
No, just dim shapes.
You don't know the truth.
Oh, just a second, Oz.
Come on, Thorny, don't hog it. It's my turn.
All right.
Hey, wait a minute, I see something.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tall, slim guy with kind of sloping shoulders and a long, thin neck. No, it's a bottle of beer. There goes the picture again.
Yeah, just have to listen to it.
And there goes the bell for the first round. In response to the many letters and cards we've received from your fans, we'll keep the conversation down to a minimum.
Oh, great.
Lazy bum, why doesn't he earn his money? Somebody must have landed a lucky punch.
Yes, but who landed it? He knows, but he won't tell us.
Oh, and another one. Oh, did you see that punch?
This is ridiculous.
Rick, have you seen your father?
Oh, I think he's over at the Thornberrys, Ma.
No, I just phoned Mrs. Thornberry, and she says she hasn't seen him all evening. Mr. Thornberry's disappeared, too.
Mom, do you know where Pop is?
No, I don't, dear. I was just asking Ricky the same thing.
Well, a fight's on, and I know he wanted to see it.
I can't imagine where he is. He can't have gone very far because his coat's over here.
Yeah, I bet you Walter could find him.
Walter, you put him in the kitchen and he couldn't find his way back to the living room.
Oh, it looks like a bloodhound to me.
Oh, Ricky, are you kidding?
I bet he could find Pop. Hey, Mom, could I have Pop's coat?
I want to watch the fight.
Come on now, Walter. Find the pants to this coat. Come on.
The crowd's going crazy here at the stadium.
Great. Hey, wait a minute. The pitcher's coming in again. You see? Yeah, I can see two guys in the ring. One guy's holding the other guy's hand up. How do you like that? The fight is over.
Oh, great. We missed the whole thing.
Missed the whole darn fight. So wait a minute. We missed the fight, but we also missed a violin recital. We put one over on the girls after all. Oh, bless you. Hey, I hear somebody outside.
Quick, let's hide.
Nobody's in here, Mom.
Turn on the light, Rick. Well, what in the world is this television set doing in here?
Walter found you, Mr. Thornberry. That's a pretty neat trick, isn't it?
What are you two guys doing up there?
Yeah, Harriet, for goodness sakes, if you wanted me to go to a violin concert, why didn't you just come out and say so? You didn't need to feed me that big dinner and come out here and sick the bloodhounds on me.
Well, what makes you think I want you to go to the violin recital?
Oh, come now. I found the 4 tickets in your bag.
Oh, well, I picked those up for Doc Williams and the Dipples.
You just want to jump head first, or shall I push you?
If you didn't want us to go to the violin recital, why did you and Catherine cook us that big delicious dinner of steak, mashed potatoes, and apple pie?
Wait a minute, Oz. Did you really have steak and mashed potatoes and apple pie for dinner?
Well, of course. What did you have?
Baked beans.
Well, I'm glad to know you enjoy good music, dear. Now you won't mind going to the Bach Festival with us next week. Catherine and I were afraid to ask you.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Thorny and I both enjoy good music. When did you say it was?
Wednesday night.
Oh, sure. It sounds like it'd be fun. Wednesday night?
Well, it starts on Wednesday and goes through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Practically a solid week of good music.
Shall we both jump?
You think the trick I taught Walter's worth $1, Mr. Thornberry? He's the one that found you.
Oh, I'd say it's worth easily $6.
$6?
Sure, $1 for the trick and $5 for hush money.
Why should I pay hush money?
Well, you guys might try this stunt again, and I'm sure you wouldn't want Catherine to know about Walter.
Pay the $6. And then what happened, Dave?
And then Babyface got up and knocked Sullivan down.
Yeah?
And the bell rang, but they kept slugging away in the middle of the ring. And when the referee tried to separate them, they both turned on him and knocked him down.
Oh. So, and what happened in the second round?
Well, the bell rang, and Sullivan came rushing out of his corner and hit Babyface and knocked him clear over the ropes in the first row. Then Babyface climbed back in the ring and knocked Sullivan over the ropes. And then they went into a clinch, and when the referee tried to separate them, they both turned on him and knocked him down. Oh, yeah, and then Kid Sullivan's manager got in a fist fight with a couple policemen. And when the announcer ran across the ring, he hit his head on the microphone.
Just sounds like a run-of-the-mill fight to me, Thorny.
Smith speaking. A portion of the Listerine antiseptic commercial was dramatized.
Yeah, it's okay. That's the commercial, only 5 seconds on the hot point.
okay.
There's not much there. Okay, so anyway, that was fun to take a look at that. And I suppose some of you know that boxing matches actually were some of the most popular shows in the 1950s.
Oh, yeah.
I remember hearing my father and relatives talking about that. Today, there's no boxing on TV, but that was a big deal back then. So. All right.
And also, does everybody know that Ozzie Nelson was also a band leader in the 30s and 40s?
Aha. So more details to learn about this. Okay, well that concludes our program for today. I don't think there's probably any questions on that particular piece of programming. So we thank you all for coming today and had lots of interesting presentations. Keep us in mind for next year again. We'll reconvene this group of very interesting people to see what we have in store for next year. All right, so if you haven't signed in, please do that just to get on the list, and that should take care of it for today. Thanks.
And thank you for